Hello, in this video I want to talk about creating three-dimensional text using the text tool in Maya. So before we really do anything, I want to make sure that we have our project directory set up and our file saved. Whenever I'm about to kind of work on a big Maya thing, I just want to make sure everything is set up correctly. So I'm going to go to the project window. I see that my project 5 is already set. I'm looking at the right folder, so that's great. And then I'm going to save my scene. I haven't even made anything yet, but I'm going to save my scene into that project file. I'm going to say scenes. I'll make a new folder called Maya type tool. I'm going to grab this. Get over here. Make sure I'm in that folder. And then 4 zeros and an MB. So whenever I'm working in Maya and I make a change and I like it, I increment and save. I don't save. The other things I'm going to check is I'm going to make sure I have middle active. I'm also going to make sure that my workspace is reset to the default so we can all see the same thing. Okay, so with the modeling menu set active, we see a bunch of orange primitives here. And the one we're looking for is this one, this big T. So if I click on that, it will create some text. It will say, 3D type. It will be flush left, ragged right. So the first thing I'm going to do is just center this. I'm going to change the text to X, Y, Z. A lot of the parameters are pretty self-explanatory, so we can change the typeface to Chura. We can change the weight to different stuff. And that's fine. We can play with the tracking, so the global distance between the letters. We can play with the leading. We can manipulate individual characters. So this is how we could maybe kern things if we want. And all that's great. What is interesting for our purposes is the fact that these are three-dimensional. These have volume. So the generator tab, we're just going to ignore for now. So then there's the geometry tab. Okay, so kind of routine text settings, and then this is what controls how it becomes a three-dimensional object. So let's just kind of go through this one by one. Actually, instead of XYZ, we'll make this ABC, so you can kind of see things a little better. Okay, so the first parameter here is the curve resolution. So this is what's controlling the amount of detail we see on the curves of these letter forms here. And so as it gets lower, it's more faceted. And as we go up, it's smoother. So more geometry and smoother. I'm going to just play with that one parameter. I'm going to ignore these. So then moving on to deformable type. This is if we're going to manipulate these letter forms, like twist and bend them. And so if I click this switch on here, you'll see it took this outer face, which is called an n-gon, and it subdivided it into triangles. An n-gon meaning more than four-sided shape. Moving our way down, there's extrusion, so it could either be flat or dimensional. We can control the distance. We can control how many subdivisions there are on the resolution. And we can also control what the profile is of this extrude. So if I click on these different things here, nothing happens because I need to multiply this profile by this offset. So now when I start to bring this up here, you can kind of see how this is working. So the middle point of this graph is the base, and if it goes above the base, it kind of punches in, and below the base it comes out, and we have like some different permutations here. You can kind of manipulate these, which is kind of neat. can also add points by clicking in there, by holding down Command, and then clicking, and that deletes it. So working our way down, we have bevels. We can turn bevels on and out, and have that bevels pop out from the original profile of the letters or bevel in, and the bevels themselves have their own profile. So let's do outer for a second. And you can see different, zoom in here, we can see different bevel types. This controls how far out from the profile it goes, and this is the kind of depth of that bevel. We can also control the subdivision. So this stair-shaped bevel, we need some more subdivisions to actually show that geometry. And if I had it bevel out more like this, you might want to go back to our text and track it out a little. And that's all we're going to cover to create our compositions in here. So the text tab and the geometry tab. So here we have our text. What's going on under the hood is actually pretty complex. To actually see what's happening here, to generate these forms, I'm going to go to a new part of Maya called the node editor. And I'll just dock this over here for a sec. We'll just collapse that. Okay, so with our text selected, I'm going to click over here. This is mapping input and output connections. And this shows the nodes. So nodes are commands that connect together to create the form. So, connecting it to time, like the commands that extrude it, the commands that build UVs are all displayable here. And so we could, within the type tool, keep all these connections alive as we manipulate our text, which is nice because you can potentially change the font or change the geometry. But for our purposes right here, we are going to make life much simpler. And we can kind of go back to these procedural workflows maybe later in the semester, maybe next semester. But for now, what I want to do is this will be our live text. So I'll put let's call it live. And what I'm going to do is just hit Command D, which is just a copy of it. So if I click this one, we see the spaghetti monster. If I click this other one over here, it's just our text. So now when we go back to, if I collapse this for a second and go back to the attribute editor and click on this one, it's just the shape. There's no history anymore. So that kind of connection of nodes to build something is called history in Maya. And so this one we'll call baked. Okay, so I'm going to hide my original just by clicking on H, and now we have this new one. So what if I wanted to move these letters around or rotate them or manipulate them? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to baked. I'm going to go mesh, separate, and now you'll see it changed color, and now there's a kind of folder and 3 sub letters in here. Now, when I go to manipulate these, we see that the manipulator, so for translation and rotation and scale, is in the center of the world. It's called the origin here, this 0, 0 point. So if we wanted this manipulator to be actually in the center of our letter, we can move it using the techniques we've covered up to this point, where I can hit D and move it. However, there's another way, and that is with the command. So I'm going to select all 3 of these, and I'm going to go modify, center pivot. Now they're in the center of each of these. So now when I scale and rotate these, it's a lot more intuitive. Now, once again, anytime we do a command in Maya, if I go back to this node editor thing, it's keeping track of our commands. It's not quite as crazy as something like Houdini or Bifrost, but there is like a construction history here. And so now that I've separated these into pieces, I want to just keep it simple. So I'm going to say delete by type history. And now we have 3 meshes. And when I map their connections, they're just geometry. And then we can, manipulate them and rotate them and scale them and create compositions however we like.